It's day 267 of quarantine. We resorted to... What? It's day 10? Alright. Alright. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today's tutorial is going over face masks. This has been a tutorial that has been requested every single day for about a week. So before we get started, I just want to remind you that there are timestamps down in the comment section down below. At the very top of the comments will be a comment from me. It'll have timestamps for every single version I'm going to be showing you today. So if you just want to skip to that, you can just click on the timestamp and it'll take you straight there in the video. So today I'm actually going to show you 3 different versions of face masks and 3 different types of straps you can use. I know elastic can be kind of hard to find right now, so I wanted to make sure you had other options for your face mask for the straps. So all 3 versions have a pipe cleaner for the nose to make it more form-fitting and a removable filter pocket. So this first version is probably the most popular one I've seen being made. This is just a basic rectangle with a couple pleats, some elastic on the side. You put it over your nose and mouth and then wrap it around your ears, just like that. I don't know if you can hear me. And you can see it just fits around your ears. It covers your whole face. We have a pipe cleaner on the top to help it fit against the top of your nose. On the back, we have a nice little open pocket, so if you have some sort of a filter that you want to put inside your face mask, you could use it for that. So this is version number 1. So version 2 is almost identical to version 1, but instead of elastic, we're going to be using this quilt binding for our strap. Now this has a couple pockets on the side. It still has the pipe cleaner on the top for your nose. It has the pocket in the back for your filter. But this time we're going to have one long binding strip that we can put over the top of our head. And then all you have to do is just pinch the sides like this. And then you can tie the back. So this is option 2. So version 3 is straight from an Instructables pattern. I'll have a link for that down in the description below. You're going to want to go to the website and download the PDF for mask 1. In the tutorial, they show you how to make this mask with elastic, so I'm going to show you what it looks like on. You can see that this has a curve. It doesn't have any pleats. So you just put it over your face, wrap it around your ears, and there you go. To show you another option, I'm actually not going to use the elastic for that tutorial. I'm going to use 4 strips of knit fabric. You could also use the cotton binding. And what we're going to do is put it over our face, and we're going to tie it on the top and tie it on the bottom, just like that. Personally, I do like the masks that tie versus the elastic. I feel like it fits my face better. It forms around my jaw much better, and it's much more comfortable. The elastic behind the ears can get kind of rough after a little bit of time. All right, so before we dive into the tutorial, I have a big disclaimer for you. First, these masks will not prevent you from getting COVID-19. Okay, I know everybody knows that, but just in case you don't get a false sense of protection. These masks will not protect you from that. Social distancing is just the most effective way to not get sick. Second, make sure you pre-wash all of your fabric before you make these masks. Depending on the type of fabric you're using, it could shrink. The types of fabric I'm seeing a lot are quilt cotton, flannel, and double gauze. All 3 of those seem to be good options for these masks. In today's tutorial, I will be using quilt cotton for the masks, and for one of the strap options, I have knit fabric. If you're making these to send to hospitals, one of the latest requests I've seen is to make sure you use a different fabric on the front than you do on the back, so that way as they take it off, they know which side was against their face and which side was against the public's face. When we're making these masks, pretty is not necessary. Your stitches don't have to be perfect, but they do need to be strong. If you're making these for hospitals, when they get them, they are going to wash them. If you're making these for anybody, I suggest you encourage them to wash their masks before they wear them. So your masks need to be able to take a beating in the washer and the dryer. Strong stitches, which means we're going to be back stitching over different areas a lot, is going to be great for that. Also, there is a ton of amazing tutorials out there for face masks. There are so many different options. The options I'm showing you today take a little bit more work than many that I've seen. I'm going to have a few links in the description down below for other videos, blog posts, Instagram stories, all those things for other options of making these masks. Personally, I will be making masks for some healthcare workers in my area that have requested them, and I will be making masks for my family. Besides helping us with the pandemic that we are all going through right now, these are also going to be useful for gardening, for woodworking, and last, there are a lot of strong opinions when it comes to this mask. I want you to know that they're all welcome here. The fact that you have a strong opinion means you care a lot about other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if you are making masks and you have a pattern you prefer, please leave them in the comment section down below. If you are in an area that needs masks, please leave that in the comment section down below. Also, if you know of resources so that other people can receive or purchase these handmade masks, please leave them in the comment section down below. That's probably the hardest thing I see, is a lot of people wanting to have masks at home just in case, but they don't sew. So I know as sewers, we're kind of reaching out to everybody we know and figuring out a way to help, but it would be nice to give options to anybody who maybe doesn't have a sewer in their life. All right, thank you so much for joining the channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider clicking subscribe down below, and let's get started. So to make face mask version 1, you're going to need 2 cuts of your lining panels. Each of these are 9 inches by 4.5 inches. You'll need 1 cut of an outer panel. This is going to be 9 inches by 7 inches. You'll need 2 cuts of elastic. I'm using 1/4 inch wide elastic. 6 to 7 inches is a really popular size. And then 1 cut of pipe cleaner. I cut this at 6 inches. So on the wrong sides of each of your lining panels, mark a 1-inch line just along one of the long edges on both of them. Now grab your iron, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold that edge up to meet that 1-inch marking, and then we're just going to press. What we're doing is making a 1/2 inch fold just so we don't have any raw edges of our fabric fraying or anything like that after they get washed. Do the same for the other panel. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew down this edge at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the raw edge of the fabric. So once you have that outer edge of your lining stitch in place, grab your exterior panel. So now take your elastic, and you can either attach your elastic at a 45-degree angle at each corner of your outer panel, or you could attach it just about 1/2 of an inch down from the corners, just like that. So whichever one is your preference. I'm going to show you how to do it in the corners. So I'm just attaching it right in the corner at a 45-degree angle, and I'm just going to clip it together like that. I'm going to do the same with the bottom, and then I'll do the same on the other side. And I am attaching these to the right side of my outer panel. All right, once you have those attached, grab one of your lining panels and lay it right side down, and make sure that your folded edge is facing towards the middle, and line it up with one of the long edges of your outer panel and clip it in place. And we're just going to include it in those corner clips with our elastic and outer panel. Next, grab your other lining panel and do the same thing, right side down with the folded edge going into the center of the rectangle, and just line it up with the opposite edge of your fabric. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew around the entire rectangle at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now you can just turn your mask right side out through the opening in your lining. You can use the elastic to help you pull out those corners nice and taut, just like this. All right, so once you have it all pulled out, let's just give the whole unit a nice press. So now grab your pipe cleaner, and what we're going to do is we're going to insert the pipe cleaner to the top of the face mask under the lining. So if you have a print that is directional and you have a top preference, make sure you figure out which that is now, and then take your pipe cleaner and just push it right into that seam on the top. Try to make it centered as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be up there and in the middle for the most part. Now what I do is just clip this pipe cleaner in place. There we go. So now before we plate this, I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to box in this pipe cleaner so it doesn't move around while we're doing the rest of the mask. I'm going to be using a zipper foot to do this. In version 3, I'm going to show you an alternative where we make the stitches first and then insert the pipe cleaner. All right, so now we have our pipe cleaner installed to the top of the mask. The lining has a nice opening on the back. All we have to do is pleat this and close up the sides. So there's lots of different ways to pleat this. You could do 2 or 3 pleats. You could just eyeball it. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to measure the halfway mark. So I'm going to fold it hot dog style in half so the long edges are against each other. And then I'm just going to clip that corner. There we go. And then I want to clip about halfway between that center line and the long edge. Again, just kind of eyeballing it. Do the same on the other side, about halfway between the long edge and the middle. So there we go. Now I have 3 pleats clipped. Now all you have to do is fold them down. So I'm going to fold mine away from the top, just like this. So you just push down that little ridge you have, and then adjust your clip to hold it to the side of your mask. All right, so now we have all 3 of our pleats pinned down. What I'm gonna do is take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along each of the sides. And I'm also gonna top stitch along the bottom just to keep everything in place so that when it's washed, it's not gonna shift too much. So your face mask is now done. If you want, you can give it a quick press just to keep those pleats in place. But remember, if you are sending this off somewhere, it's most likely going to get washed, so those will come apart. So here is the front of your face mask. Here is the back. We have a nice opening back here. We can put in a liner if we need to. On the very top of it, we have that pipe cleaner so that we can form this to fit against our nose, just to help offer a little bit more protection. The elastic will go around your ears. So this is a completed version 1 mask. So version 2 is very similar to version 1. The only difference being, instead of elastic, we're going to create our own binding strap. In order to facilitate that, we're going to have pockets on the side of the mask, which means the measurements for our lining and our outer panels are going to be a little bit different. The lining panels are each going to be 10.5 inches long by 4.5 inches tall. The outer panel is going to be 10.5 inches long by 7 inches tall. Once again, you'll need another 6-inch cut of pipe cleaner. And instead of elastic, we're going to create our own strap. Now, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a strap that is going to be about 1/2 inch wide. In previous versions, I've made my strap about 1/4 inch wide. The process is the same. We want our strap to be between 44 to 50 inches long. If you don't have a piece of fabric that is that long, that's no problem. I'm going to show you how I take 2 strips of fabric and piece them together first, and then we will make our 1/2 inch binding. For 1/2 inch binding, you're going to need to cut strips of fabric that are 2 inches wide. If you wanted to make 1/4 inch binding, you're going to need to cut strips of fabric that are 1 inch wide. So to create a nice long piece of binding, I'm going to take 2 strips of fabric. These are each about 31 inches long, which is longer than I need at the moment, but I will trim that down in just a minute. So I'm going to grab both strips of binding and I'm going to lay them right sides together at a 90-degree angle. I'm just going to line up the top and side edges just like this. So you want it so that when we sew a diagonal and it opens flat going the same direction. So after you line it up, just make sure you test it out. We want to make sure we sew in the right direction. Now I'm going to draw a line from the top left corner on the wrong side of my top binding down to that bottom right corner. You can use a ruler for this, or you can just kind of eyeball it. I'm just eyeballing it. I'm going to use a couple of pins to hold it together. And now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew along this marked line. Once you have these 2 strips sewn together, we can just clip along that edge, leaving about 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then we just want to press this open. So grab your iron, press the seam once to set it, open up your fabric so you have right sides out. Press along that seam again. And I like to press the seam open on the back just to keep this as flat as possible. So I just open up that seam with my fingers and then run the iron along it. So I'm going to make my strip about 50 inches long. That way it's better to be longer than too short. So I'm just going to use the markings on my table to help me measure it out. It doesn't have to be exact, but I know when I fold it in half, each side needs to be 25 inches long. So I'm just going to cut along that mark, and there we go. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. So there's a couple different options for making the binding. We can fold the entire strip wrong sides together lengthwise once like this, and then fold our raw edges up to meet that center press. Or you can take a ruler and mark 1-inch line running along the entire strip and then just fold up to meet that mark. I think I'm going to mark the strip instead of pressing it. So I'm just going to go along the entire strip, marking a 1-inch midpoint line. And now we can grab our iron and we can just press these long raw edges up to meet that center line. So I'm just going to do one edge at a time, just kind of running along with my iron. So now that you have the long folds meeting the middle, let's close up the ends real quick. I'm just going to open this along the short end and fold it over anywhere between 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. And then just clip in place. I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. Just open it up, fold along that short edge, and clip in place. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch along these raw edges on the short end at about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, once you have those short ends tucked in and sewn on, just refold right next to it. And now what we want to do is fold along the entire strip so that the edges are nothing but the double fold on one side and the single fold on the other. You can use a few clips, but we're going to take this to the sewing machine and stitch it down. Alright, once you have your binding prepped, let's take this to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew along that double fold at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not going to sew along the other side, just the double fold. Alright, once you have your strap complete, we can continue on with the face mask. So just like before, we're going to close one long edge of each of our lining panels. So flip your lining panels wrong side up, and on the back of each one, draw a 1-inch mark along one of the long sides. Grab your iron, and what we're going to do is we're going to fold that raw edge that's nearest to the marked line, and we're just going to fold it up to meet that line and press it in place. Do this for both of your lining panels. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and just sew along that edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, so grab your outer panel and lay it right side up. Grab your 2 lining panels and we're going to lay them right side down with the folded edge facing into the center of the rectangle. And just clip those in place. They should overlap one another. Now we can just clip these together. And now we're going to sew around the entire rectangle at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, once you have this all sewn together, just go ahead and clip down those corners, making sure you don't clip into your stitches. And now you can turn the face mask right side out. Make sure you poke out those corners. There we go. Now I like to give this a good press first. Alright, just like in version 1, we're going to add our pipe cleaner before we pleat it. So I just lift up one of the lining panels and push my pipe cleaner right in the seam and centered on my panel. And now I'm going to clip this in place again, making sure I know where the pipe cleaner begins and ends. And now I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a box right around that pipe cleaner using a zipper foot so I can get as close as possible. I just don't want this pipe cleaner moving around inside my mask. So once we have our pipe cleaner installed, we can go ahead and pleat this. So just like before, I'm going to fold the whole unit, lining side together along the long edges, just like this. And then just add a clip to the sides. And then I'm just going to eyeball the midpoint between the long edge and that clip. And just add a couple more clips there. And again, these are about 1/2 inch pinches. If you're having a hard time getting 3, just use 2 pleats. That's perfectly fine. The other ones I made were used with 2 pleats. All right, once you have your pleats pinched, now we're just going to fold them. You can fold them up towards the top or down. I think I'm going to fold mine down. All right, there we go. Now we have our pleats pinned and ready to be sewn. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew along the sides and the bottom of my mask. When I sew down these pleats, I like to go from the top, bottom. I like to go in the direction that the folds are pointing. So I don't like to go against the pleats because I find it makes it a little bit difficult on my machine. So I start at the top and go down the pleats, doing the same on the other side as well. All right, so here is your face mask that is now pleated. Now the last thing we need to do is actually just make little pockets on the sides to hold our strap. Now, there are many ways to do this. I'm sure there are better options than this. So if you want to share how you do the same type of method, please leave it in the comment section down below. But I'm going to show you what I do. So we want about a 1/2 inch opening from that stitch line for our pocket. So I just lay my ruler at the 1/2 inch mark along that stitch line just to kind of figure out where I need to fold my fabric, and I just fold it over like that. So then I'm just going to clip the bottom and top edges. Just want to make sure that your pocket has enough space for your binding. Now the thicker the binding you use, the more space you're going to need. I like it to be a bit of a snug fit anyways, so I think this will be okay. I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to line up my ruler with the 1/2 inch mark on those stitches that are on the side of the pleats. Fold up my ruler, fold my fabric over my ruler, and then move it out of the way. And then I'm going to pin the top and the bottom. If your pleats are kind of messed up, don't worry about it. We'll fix them in just a minute. And then just clip along the edge as well to hold it all in place. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to refold my pleats real quick. If you want, you can give these a press just to keep them in place while you're sewing. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm just going to sew over those top stitch marks on both sides of my panel. So I have the lining right side up and the folds in front of me, and I'm just going over those top stitches. Don't sew on the top and the bottom of your pocket. We're only sewing vertical seams along that top stitch. Make sure you backstitch well at the beginning and the end. So here's our mask, here's our strap. In order to feed the strap through the sides, I do recommend using something like a safety pin, and I'll show you how to do that. If you have a preference on where the hoop is, if you want the hoop to go around the top of your head and then the straps to be tied on the bottom of your head, then make sure you know where your top of your mask is. For example, the top of my mask is where I have the pipe cleaner. And I do like the hoop going up around the top. You might prefer to have it go on the bottom so it wraps around the back of your head and then you tie it to the top. I say just trying out both and seeing which you prefer. All right, so I'm going to take a safety pin and I'm just going to insert that into the end of my binding. And then what I do is I just push that safety pin into the pocket. And what you do is you just feel the safety pin and move it along the pocket. Safety pin likes to get caught up in the pleats. Just take your time. Just tug along the end as you go. Once you get it out on one end, you should be able to just kind of pull it. Pull the whole thing. There you go. All right, so now you'll have one side through the strap. You can go ahead and do the other side. I'm not too particular about making sure this stays straight or anything like that. If you are, just straighten it out before you insert it on the other side. Once again, I'm going to use a safety pin and just pin it through the end, close it up, and push it into my pocket. All right, there you go. This is version 2, which has a binding that goes over the top of your head and ties on the bottom of your neck. So for version 3, you're first going to want to go down to the website I have listed below. It's with Instructables, and you're going to want to print out the PDF for mask 1. There'll be an A unit and a B unit. The A unit is your exterior and the B unit is your lining. You're going to want to cut 2 pieces of fabric from A and 2 pieces of fabric from B. When cutting these, remember that they need to be cut mirrored. So what you're going to do is fold your fabric in half so that you have 2 layers with wrong sides together or right sides together, and then trace along the pattern and cut out. We don't want 2 pieces of fabric when laying right side up exactly the same. They need to be mirrored copies of one another. Do that for both the exterior and the lining. In the tutorial online, they use elastic for the ear straps. I'm going to show you a different version. This is 4 strips of knit fabric. You can use any sort of really nice stretchy fabric. Each of them are cut at 1 inch by 18 inches long. You could also just use 2 cuts at 1 inch by 36 inches long. These are actually quite long, so you're going to probably trim these down after you're done with your mask, but just to have extra room, keep a nice long length. And once again, we will be using a pipe cleaner for the nose portion. This is a 4-inch long pipe cleaner. Okay, so first take your A units, which are your outer panels, and lay them right sides together just like this. Line up all of the edges nicely, and then just pin or clip along that curved front edge. All right, we're going to do the same thing with the lining panel. Just lay them right sides together, wrong sides out, lining up all the edges, and then clip along that front curve. All right, we're going to take these to the sewing machines, and we're going to sew along each of these curves that are clipped at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So once you have these sewn, just go along that rounded curve and clip every 1/2 inch or so. Make sure you don't cut your stitches. This just allows the fabric to fold over itself, so you have a nice smooth curve. It doesn't get all bunched up, look crazy. Do it the same for the lining as well. So now we're going to fold down some seams in preparation of sewing. So on the short, straight edge of your lining panel, go ahead and mark a 1/2 inch line from that raw edge. Do that on both sides of the lining panel only right now. And now grab your iron, and we're going to fold the raw edge wrong sides together up to meet that mark, just like this. We're just tucking in the raw edge of our lining panel. Since this won't get sewn down in the end, this little fold is going to help protect the opening for a filter if you choose to use one. All right, so you can go ahead and put this to the side for now. Next, grab your exterior panel piece, and where these dots are, go ahead and mark little holes in those dots. Take your panel piece and lay it so that it's lined up with the wrong side of your exterior panel with that edge. And then I just use a marker to poke dots in those holes so that you transfer those dots to your panel. Do the same on the other side, just like this. On the short side edge, mark a 1/2 inch tick on the edge of your panel on the top and the bottom. So I have a 1/2 inch from the top corner on the side and a 1/2 inch from the bottom corner. Then if you want, you can grab your ruler and just draw a line going from that dot to that 1/2 inch tick, just like this. We're going to fold along this line, so this just makes it a little bit easier to see. Do the same thing on the other side. We're going to measure just a 1/2 inch down from the top corner and a 1/2 inch up from the bottom corner. And then draw a line from our dot to that tick. Here we go. All right, while we're here, also draw a 1/2 inch line along the short, straight side of your outer panel. So one edge should look like this with these angled lines in a straight line. I know it's kind of crazy right now. You think you're in geometry class. You're not. This is just gonna make it easier to press and sew in the next step. Okay, so first let's press down these angled edges. So just fold your fabric right along that drawn line that's along that top corner and then just press it down. Don't worry if it's not exact. Again, all we're doing right now is just closing up some raw edges to make it easier when we sew it all together in the end. And then do the same for the bottom. And then with the side, you're going to fold the raw short edge to meet up with that marked line and then just press down. If you notice this edge popping up too much, just put a couple clips on it. Keep it in place. I'm going to do the same for the other side. So once again, I'm just going to fold right along that edge as close as I can. And then I'm going to do the same on the bottom. Just fold along that marked line. Go. And then on the short edge, I'm just going to fold to meet that marked line. There we go. You can put a couple clips on this one as well if you want. So here we go. We have our lining and our exterior with these raw edges folded down. So now we're going to sew along these edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we're going to start on an angle, an 1/8 of an inch from the fold, all the way down the side and up against the other fold. We're going to do that for both sides of the exterior. For the lining, we're going to again do an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just straight down that short edge. So now what we can do is just measure in 1 1/4 inch from our outer panel folded edges and draw a line going straight down like that. Do the same on the other side as well. 1 1/4 inches in. Just like that. So now we're going to take our short edge and we're going to fold it up to meet that marked line and then just give it a good press. Do the same on the other side. And if you were going to continue on with the pattern and use elastic, what you would do here is just sew along these edges to create a tunnel like we did in version 2. But I'm switching it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is grab my 4 strips. And like I said, if you just had 2 really long strips, that would work perfectly here. So I'm going to grab the edge of 1 strip and fold it in half so that it's about 1/2 of an inch. With the raw edges pointing into that fold, I'm just going to line it up about 1 inch in here. It's not precise. It kind of goes to the middle. And then I'm going to fold the fabric over my strap and clip in place. I'm going to do the same for the bottom. I'm going to grab another strap, fold it in half, and then just insert it into the fold with the raw edges going into the fold of the fabric, and then fold the side of my face mask over it, just like this. So it just tucks it in like that. So if you had 1 long piece of fabric, you would do the same thing. You would just find the midpoint of your strip, fold it in half, and tuck the whole thing in the fold of the outer panel of the mask. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Here's another strip, fold it wrong sides together with the raw edge going up into that fold and clip in place. And then the last strip, same thing. And there we go. All right, so if you were doing the elastic, you would just sew 2 vertical lines so that you had a tube and the elastic could slide through it. Since we're not doing that, what we're going to do is just sew over the top stitching along the entire edge. So starting from on the left side, starting from that folded left side corner, I'm going to go across, I'm going to go down the strip, and then I'm going to go back over on the bottom and back stitch at the beginning and the end. I'm trying to make sure I catch as much of the straps as possible so that they don't come dislodged at any point. So I'm just going to follow along the entire top stitching of both of my edges on the outer panel. right, your outer panel should now look like this. You have your straps attached. Now all we have to do is attach the lining. So with right sides together, grab your outer panel and your lining panel, and we're just gonna line them up with those center seams matching. So what I do is I start at the top and I just fold the seam allowances in opposite directions and match up those seams just like that, and then clip together. And then I'm gonna go down to the bottom and do the same, matching up the seams so that they're right up against each other, and then I just fold the seam allowances in opposite directions so they're giving each other a little hug. Here we go. And now just go along and clip along the top and bottom edges. Okay, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both of these clipped edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, go ahead and turn your mask so that it is right side out. So let's give this a good press before we top stitch and add our nose guard. So now let's take this to the sewing machine and we're just going to top stitch along the bottom and top edges. So now all we have to do is add the pipe cleaner around the nose. So what I did is I measured about 2 inches away from that center seam on each side and placed a pin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew down the left side, then I'm going to sew another row of stitches that's about a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch away from this top stitching stitches all the way to the other pin. What I'm trying to do is create a pocket that I can slide my pipe cleaner into and then close off the stitches after the pipe cleaner is installed. Okay, so grab your pipe cleaner. If you have a really pointy edge, what I do is I just fold down that pointy edge. Pipe cleaners are nice and fluffy, so you can just fold it down and now you have a dull edge. And you're going to insert your pipe cleaner through the opening between your lining and your outer panel. And you're just going to push it through that little pocket we made. Just push it in as far as it'll go. Now, all we have to do is go back to the sewing machine and sew this side edge closed. So feel around for your pipe cleaner, make sure it's not going past your stitches, and then we're just going to sew this little box right here closed, and then your mask is done. Alright guys, there we go. There are 3 different mask options using 3 different strap options. Let's run through them real quick. The first one we made is just a traditional pleated one with elastic on the side. It has a pipe cleaner on the top to form over your nose, a nice opening on the back so you can insert a filter if you wanted to. You just wrap it around your ear, just like that. The second option is very similar to the first, but instead of the elastic, we have this adjustable straps. So to use this, we just put it over our face, tighten on the sides, and then wrap around the back. And there you go. And the last option goes over your face just like this, and then you tie it on the top, and then tie it on the bottom, and it fits really nicely. Honestly, I like all 3 options. I find all of them to be very comfortable. I do feel like they're all very enclosed around my face. If I had to use one of these, I would be more than fine doing so. Alright, so let me know what you think. If you have another pattern that you prefer to use, please leave it down in the comment section down below. I'd love for everyone who watches this video to have lots and lots of options. These are not the only way to make the masks. These are not the quickest way to make the masks. So if you have more options, leave them down below. If you're watching this video and none of these seem to be doable for you, make sure you visit the comment section down below and see what the other options are. I hope all of you are taking care of yourself. I know that this is a crazy time in the world right now. We will get through it. And if this face mask situation teaches us anything, it's that people are eager to help. It might be hard right now, but when we look back on this, I think most of us are going to remember how much everybody showed up for their neighbors and strangers and doctors and firefighters and police officers, how we all showed up for each other. I hope you have a great week. Do your best to stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you next time. Bye!